Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We now move on to the second potentially extracted site, which was the Tansley site, I think HC2DD. And again, I'm going to ask Councillor Stevens for her reasons for validation of that extraction. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this one is actually in my ward. I opposed this site at Tansley House Gardens, known as Schloss 467 and also as HC2DD, at the local plan meeting after reading the report of the Planning Inspectorate's appeal decision dated the 22nd of January 2015, which refers to a planning application for this same piece of land. The inspector only granted permission for the top part of this site and went on to highlight the importance of the green buffer zone, which she considered of high significance in order to reduce any adverse impact of the impending development on the landscape character and setting of the village. She also commented saying that the development would retain a significant land buffer between the houses and the conservation boundary. There would therefore be a neutral effect on the setting of the conservation area. I believe that the site now proposed for inclusion in the plan, which sits below that area that was granted permission by the inspector, will take away a large area of what she considered a buffer zone, and I believe that it will impact on the Lumsdale Conservation Area and Scheduled Ancient Monument Site, which has been recognised as being of national importance. In addition to this, there are major problems on Church Street with traffic. We've heard from Mrs. Rains about traffic impact studies. Nothing is happening in the village. The road is regularly gridlocked. We've had buses with children having to unload and the children being brought back to school through the village because the street is not wide enough. It can only get worse if this goes in. The additional proposed numbers plus what is being agreed and what could go on the site would bring this number up to 50. It is far too many. The village is already taking additional sites. There is an alternative site that can come in and will or would replace this site. It was in the last plan. It is the Whiteley Nursery site. The officers held it back this time on the grounds that it couldn't go in because access couldn't be achieved. Now, access can't be achieved on this one, but I would like to see rejected. The developer of the Whiteley Nursery site has indicated, this was confirmed by Mr. Wilson at the last plan meeting, that they now have the land to develop displays for the nursery site. I would like to see that site, which is a brownfield site, going in. The village on consultation are happy with that site. I would ask for support for this one to come out and the other one to go in.
I think the seconder is Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Not very often that I agree with Councillor Stevens in one night, twice in one night, but on this occasion I do. And I just have to remind members that we're not being flippant. We see the problems locally and we're putting the case for our local residents. We all would like to have supported the local plan, but doing it the way we have done tonight actually found difficulty in that. The way that I'm coming from this as well is that we talk about the protection and enhancing the distinctive landscape within our towns and larger villages. But I still fail to see how excessive development in our villages it will only seek to destroy what we've got as an area to offer our residents and our visitors to Derbyshire Dales. If we keep eroding our countryside and swamping our villages with overdevelopment, it is not going to remain attractive for those visitors of which we depend. Again, I understand your legal duty in what you've got to do, but this is a site where we can offer a different site to take place. Where we are at the moment with this are reasons set out by Councillor Stevens in the reasons that the inspector actually refused this. And it would have a detrimental effect. If you go up the cliff now on the main road, you look to your left, you see a small village nestling in the countryside. This will be so prominent, you will soon be part of Matlock. That will be a shame because it is a distinctive and very important village with very few amenities. We've also been swamped with applications in Tansley at the moment. We've got new development. Actually, the access is going to be on a road which is substandard. It was put in for 5 dwellings, and now we're going to be a lot more than that, nearly 100. So we've got a staggered crossroads at the top of there, where another new development is taking place on Oak Tree Gardens. We have had buses that will not go into Tansley because they've not been able to get because of parked vehicles on Church Street. There is a real and definite problem. And that's all I'm going to say tonight, Chair, but I really hope that with the offer of another site being put in, you can look kindly on this application. Thank you very much.
I'd like to call on Paul for comments on the validation of the proposal, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mr Stevens correctly refers to the appeal decision considered back in January of 2015, and as she quite rightly pointed out, the buffer zone, which was indicated as part of the potential development of the larger site, which was the subject of appeal, was identified as being important insofar as protecting the character of the conservation area. Members visited this site on the advisory committee, and the question effectively is whether a smaller buffer zone would serve that equal purpose, such that you could accommodate in effect a larger development to that which was granted on appeal. The officer assessment is that that could be undertaken. The access to this development effectively has already been approved through Tansley House Gardens, and there is a right of access across that land, and the extended area which we're proposing for allocation would effectively be served through the development which has already been granted on appeal. Members do need to be made aware of the fact that representations on the Whiteleys Nursery site were received very late in the day at the last advisory committee, and it may well be through the consultation process that representations will come forward to propose the allocation of that site. And I will say this for all sites, that whilst ever we still have a shortfall in terms of the objectively assessed need figure, we should seek to close that shortfall as much as possible. So it's not quite as simple as taking this site out and putting another site in, because we would still have the shortfall on the 6440, but members can exercise a judgment as to how significant that may or may not be.
Members, you have 5 minutes. I've got Councillor Botham first.
I'm not going to add to anything that Councillor Hitter or Councillor Stevens has said about Tansley. Everything they've said is justified, but I'd just like to reiterate that if there is another site that the residents are happy with, that will help with the number crunching, then it must be a win-win situation for everybody. I'd like you to consider that, please.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Yes, I'd like to support the exclusion of this site. I wasn't happy with it when we looked at the Local Plan Advisory Committee.
So can you get the mic from a bit closer? I can't.
It's open to, this site is open to landscape objections, and it's very close to Lumsdale Conservation Area, which it will affect, and opening a narrow buffer zone is going to be effective. So on heritage and landscape grounds, I think it's...
So can you move the mic even closer, please?
It's not working.
No, your mouth's got to get closer to you.
So I also find it ironic that Whiteley Nursery was excluded, and this is where I have a beef with the assessment procedure, to be honest, because that site was open to objections because of the lack of control over third-party land for access of one kind or another, whereas the site that you've just chosen in Matlock not to exclude was open to exclusion, or was requiring the acquisition of third-party land of about 20 properties, I would think. So there, again, it's not consistent the way these sites have been assessed. There are a lot of sites that have been rejected, which probably would have been, well, like Whiteley Nursery, could have been considered acceptable if they'd been considered in detail at the earlier stage on the Local Plan Advisory Committee, but we didn't actually, contrary to what's been said, we didn't look at each excluded site at all. They were put in front of us as excluded. And unless you went around the whole district looking at these sites, you couldn't decide whether they were rightfully assessed and rejected or not. But anyway, going back to this site, I fully agree with Councillor Stevens, Councillor Flitter and Councillor Botham that it should be excluded from the local plan.
Councillor Morley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a matter of clarification. There's something said before which was quite disturbing, and I'd like to clarify it for the members of the public. We do have a planning committee. Something was said that if it goes in the plan, it'll be nodded through. And I'm quoting, that's in terms. We have a planning committee. I've just done a straw poll. There's over 150 years of experience amongst the members of the planning committee. There's a chairman and a vice chairman, and it's a good job they're not easily offended. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rose.
Well, Chairman, I put this in a slightly different category to the previous one, in the sense that I think there is a situation here which could arise through the public consultation, whereby, you know, it might get excluded after that process, and it might not, depending, as Paul has said, on the numbers game. But this one certainly has some expectation that's possible, particularly if Whiteley comes in. It's all right, Councillor Burford, criticising the process that the Local Plan Advisory Committee went through. I think many speakers have already said that, you know, it was pretty hard graft, and he was part of it. And we all know that the Whiteley situation came up right at the last minute when the highway access issue resolved. So I have not the slightest doubt that this is going to come back to us in due course. But I think for the time being, and I'm being as helpful as I can be, and I know Tansley won't believe it, I think we should keep it in.
Any more speakers? In which case, I will ask Councillor Stevens to sum up.
Well, it has more or less all been said. There's not much more I can say. My only comment would be the Whiteley site is for more houses from this side. The traffic coming out of Whiteley is at the top end of the village. Any vehicles going out to Alfreton, Chesterfield would not have to come down through Church Street. It is virtually adjacent to the local school, so it would be safe access for the children along a footpath that links directly to the school. No road with traffic problems to cross. Please use your consciences on this one. We would be putting one in for more numbers than we're taking out, and Tansley is taking a large number of houses. It's already had several sites passed. There's development there waiting to happen as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Shelley.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Could I propose that we go to a recorded vote, please?
Okay, is that seconded?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we're going to have a recorded vote once again, and once again the four means to agree with Councillor Stevens and extract this site from the local plan. Okay. Jack.
Councillor Atkin.
Against.
Councillor Botham.
For.
Councillor Martin Barefoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Barefoot.
For.
Councillor Catt.
Against.
Councillor Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Donnelly.
Against.
Councillor Anne Elliott.
For.
Councillor Graham Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Against.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Furness.
For.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Councillor Millward.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
Against.
Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Salt.
Against.
Councillor Shirley.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Swindle.
For.
Councillor Tibbenham.
Against.
Councillor Tilbrook.
Against.
Councillor Wilde.
Against.
And the numbers, please.
10, 18, 10, 4, 18 against.
18 votes against, 10 in favour. Motion is defeated.
Okay, can I have someone to propose the inclusion of this site?
Move it
Was there an abstention?
be re-included.
Sorry, you.
I move it be reinstated.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded. It's been moved and seconded for reinstatement. All those in favour? All those against, please.
It's 18 in favour with 10 against, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That one's reinstated in the draft local plan. Thank you very much. The residents of Tansley are welcome to stay. We're moving on to the next one, which is the Snitterton one, HC2 brackets F. Councillor Swindle to validate its extraction.
Double A.
Double A. Beg your pardon. Thank you.
I almost feel like I know how this is going to go anyway, but I'm going to give it my best shot and ask members to give it their full and serious consideration. This is a site that is right in the middle of Snitterton, and I ask members to extract it. I'd like to start by thanking Paul Wilson for renaming this site. When I spoke against it at the local Plan Advisory Committee, it came under the category of map lots. So that, as you can imagine, the debate was dominated by Grixton Road, Pinewood Road, and this sort of, in my opinion, slipped under the radar and didn't get a full hearing. So I thank Paul Wilson for relabelling it as South Darley. It is in South Darley. This is a site which is going to be at the end of a corridor from Corder Quarry. Snitterton Field is next to Permanite, which has been included in the plan tonight. It will go alongside 400 houses potentially in Corder Quarry. And the residents of South Darley parish, particularly Snitterton and Oakham, aren't being NIMBYs. They're being quite practical and rational, and I thank them for that in the emails that they've sent to me. They've quite openly welcomed development in Corder Quarry, which will impact on Snitterton. They've quite openly welcomed development at Permanite, which will have an impact on the area, and also at Darley Bridge. But we believe that Snitterton Field is a step too far. The report that was sent to the local advisory committee did say itself that the existing character of the settlement will be upset, that there is historic and heritage assets in the area, and this field is right on the periphery of the Peak Park. The road that runs alongside it actually is the boundary between the District Council Planning Authority and the Peak Park, so we don't believe it's suitable for that reason. More importantly, it's a greenfield site that does flood. It has a brook at the top and it floods. And there is the potential for highways issues in Oakham and Snitterton. If you've driven through Oakham and Snitterton, I don't need to tell you about the bends in the road, a single track road, no pavements and no safe pedestrian access. If, which is inevitable, an access was put from that site into Oakham Snitterton, the traffic and road safety down there would be chaotic, to put it bluntly. But overall, the major concern is that if you develop Corder, you then go on to develop Permanite, and then you move into those fields right next into the village of Snitterton, next to the properties there, we will lose, in my opinion, a village. The urban sprawl from Matlock right along there is a step too far, and Snitterton and Oakham will eventually be swallowed up by this site if it's included. We talk about wanting to create a new village at times at the local plan. In this situation, in my opinion, you're going to lose one. And I praise the residents, as I've said, because they have been very reasonable in accepting all of the other sites, reluctantly. Brownfield sites they may be, but this is just one step too far. Finally, in the report it does say that there is low flood risk. That is not correct, and also that there is a bus transport link within 5 minutes of the site. The closest one's actually in Matlock. You'll be walking 20 to 25 minutes. And when you rearrange those traffic light signals on the report, you'd actually see that it's actually more undevelopable than some of the sites that were rejected. So I strongly urge members to support rejection of this site, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be seconded by Councillor Sue Burford.
Thank you, Chair. It's always difficult to follow Colin. He's very eloquent. Such a young man. I am actually, I'm more than happy to second this and ask for this one to be withdrawn. Colin, as I said, very eloquently has talked about the landscape impact. There's also visual impact. It can be clearly seen from Matlock Bank and Farley Hill, and you know, obviously I live there. And so I'm very aware of the visual impact that it will have. Colin also talked about traffic access. But I'd also like to bring up, if I may, policy S8, which is in the draft local plan, that talks about maintaining a strategic gap between Matlock and Darley-Dale through important open spaces. If this site was to be allocated and subsequently delivered, Snitterton and Oakham would no longer be separate from Matlock, so I really don't see how this can be taken forward. So I would urge you as well to pull it out.
Can I ask for validation through our officers' call, please?
Chairman, thank you. Just referring to the last point on policy S8, this isn't actually one of the protected fields identified under that policy, because that policy relates to fields on the south side of the A6 between Matlock and Darley-Dale, so this site is not covered by that. Councillor Swindoll is absolutely right insofar as there was an error in the original assessment regarding the public transport services, and that has been corrected in the SHLA, which is ultimately going to be published. And he's also correct in that the site does fall within flood zone 2, but that in itself doesn't rule out development. It just means that development would need to be subject to a flood risk assessment. So that comes back to the point of engaging the Environment Agency and getting their verification to the site and moving forward. The proposed allocation is 50% of the land area that was originally submitted and considered through the advisory committee. So it's very much a reduced site, and any development of this site would not seek to provide a direct link through to Oakham and Snitterton, but it would be accessed through the development of Corder Quarry and the Permanite site.
Okay, who else members would like to speak? Councillor Salt, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've remained quite quiet through most of the sites that have come up through this evening, but this is the one that gives me the most cause for concern, because it simply seems to be in the middle of nowhere with no specific links to it, and so close to the edge of the Peak District that whilst many things perhaps could be mitigated through development and through planning permission and things like that, I can't see any way in which the impact upon the view of it from the Peak National Park and the impact on the Peak National Park, with it being quite literally, you could throw a stone into the Peak National Park from this side, how that could be mitigated in any way down and reconciled with policy S5 of developing the countryside, which is meant to enhance the Peak National Park. I think it's just too close, and for that reason I support the extract.
Thank you for your clarification. Councillor Rose?
Well, the Local Plan Advisory Committee looked at this very carefully, believe you me, and obviously I think members are well aware that we're still short of numbers, and I can't see that this site is any different to a number of other sites within the district. There's a lot of water to flow under the bridge in terms of the processes that will have to be gone through, particularly on the consultation and what comes out after that. And in my view, we should leave it in there at this point in time, because Paul has rightly alluded to on other applications, well, I'm afraid about the next one, you know, there's a lot to be done yet, and I think at this stage we're best advised to keep this in.
Members, you're rather reticent now. Andrew.
President Chairman, could we have moved to recorded vote?
Do I take a second then? Thank you. If there's no further members to make a comment, I'll go back to Councillor Swindle. I beg your pardon. Yes, yeah, I beg your pardon. Yeah, it's your beard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long night. Yeah, we could go over all the talk again about we need the numbers, and so on. And I'm going to stress the point again. My residents in South Darley have been very, very good about this. They've emailed me and said, yes, I know we need the numbers. We don't want any of these sites. They're going to impact on South Darley. But they thought, we're not going to get away with it. We're not going to get them all extracted. So let's pick the one that is really, really bad. And this is the one they picked. The contempt with Halldale, the contempt with Darley Bridge, and the contempt with former permanite site down there. And I think you know, it's a tribute to them for how grown up and rational and reasonable they've been about it. I won't go over the arguments again, but I think if you think really deep about this one, you know, this site just doesn't make sense as to where it is, right on the corner there in Smithston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been moved and seconded for extraction. We're going to have a recorded vote again. Jack.
Councillor Atkin.
Against.
Councillor Botham.
For.
Councillor Martin Barefoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Barefoot.
For.
Councillor Catt.
Against.
Councillor Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Donnelly.
Against.
Councillor Anne Elliott.
For.
Councillor Graham Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Against.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Furness.
For.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Councillor Millward.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Pawley.
Against.
Councillor Purdy.
Against.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Swindle. Councillor Tibbenham.
Against.
Councillor Tilbrook.
Against.
Councillor Wilde.
Against.
So, can we have the numbers, please?
9 votes for with 19 against. The motion is
Motion is defeated. Councillor Rose, did you want to propose?
So moved, Chairman, that it's reinstated.
Seconded. Seconded. Thank you very much. Can we put it to the vote, please? So to include this site in the draft local plan, please. Show of hands, please. Those for. And those against.
19 and 9 against.
Thank you very much. We move on to the next one, and the residents of Snitterton are welcome to go with, and I beg your pardon, the resident. Well, That's why I need more houses there. I beg your pardon, Brailsford, you've had to wait so long, but hopefully you've seen the way we've executed our democracy tonight. We move to the site, and this one is the Throssell's Nest site in Brailsford. Councillor Jenkins to propose its extraction.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to presume to second guess the planning committee, so I'm going to leave planning issues where they lie. I understand that the officers, it's very difficult for the officers when consultees who know better than us, like Highways and the Environment Agency, give their opinion, and legally we cannot go against. So whilst the residents of Brailsford are concerned about congestion and flooding and various other things, they are not issues for us to decide one way or the other. My concerns with this site rely on 5 or 6 key points, and I'll attempt to be brief, but to the point. Firstly, this is considered to be a high sensitivity area of the Wardell survey of 2015. In addition to that, it has been comprehensively turned down for numerous reasons over the years, including when it was part of the provision for a school. It's very hard for residents of Brailsford to understand why a site that has been so unsuitable for so many years should suddenly come forward now, other than simply to as a lazy way of finding sites. I would also like to ask or pose the question to councillors about the tipping point. At what point does a village become a town? In addition, I would like you to consider, and this is a key point, is the settlement hierarchy. I do not agree that the settlement hierarchy has been applied equally to all areas. And I think that Brailsford has taken more sites in relation to its position in the settlement hierarchy than it is suitable for the village. And that's the district's own settlement hierarchy. We also need to look, in terms of mitigation, at our overall policy. The time has come, in my opinion, for us to start to seek very small developments in the outlying parishes. If Tier 4 and 5 sites, I know some have got some, but the majority of Tier 4 and 5 villages have been left relatively well alone. 3 or 4 houses in each of those would come to 50 or 60 houses, for example. We cannot just squeeze all of our houses into single areas. We have to carry the can as a whole district, obviously outside of the Peak Park. For those reasons, I would like, and I challenge Brailsford to come forward with mitigating sites itself. And I would also like, in mitigation, that as the process of the local plan has gone forward, a number of small sites totalling 60 houses have come forward and have been passed in that time. And I don't think, I know the local plan advisory committee have done a huge amount of work, but a lot of that has happened in the start to finish period. And I think that it has led to a stacking up of development for Brailsford over and above what was intended by the committee. And that these small sites in themselves mitigate removing one of the larger sites from the plan. In my opinion, that site should be the Throssell Nest Way site, HC2F, based on its history. It has been so comprehensively removed as a suitable site for development so many times, and it is given a high sensitivity that it seems to me that it is suitable for extraction from the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your proposal. Councillor Swindle, I think you're going to second it.
Yes, Chair, and I did second this because when the ward member raises that there's obviously concern amongst his or her ward residents, then I believe, even though I have no valid issue in front of me to bring to the table to say why it should be excluded. I felt that it should be given the opportunity to be aired and for it to be debated properly, and if anything for the residents of Brailsford who have come here tonight. I'm one of those councillors who's quite lucky. I've got half of my ward in the Peak Park and half in the district council planning area. So that means I don't have too much of this to contend with. And Elton, where I live, isn't too dissimilar from Brailsford in the way of size and number of people living there. And I think to myself about the number of sites that are being put around Brailsford, and the number of houses that could potentially be developed. And I think to myself, would I really want that for my village? Would I really want that around Elton and see Elton disappear and become swamped with all of these houses? And it's incredible how many, it's actually staggering how many are potentially, are proposed and have the potential for development in that area. And again, and I sympathise with the residents of Brailsford as I do for the residents in Snitterton, because you will lose a village. It's as simple as that, like the residents of Oakham and Snitterton would. It's just too far for me, this one. So although I've seconded it, Chair, to air the debate, I'll be supporting Councillor Jenkins and the residents of Brailsford.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the officers. You're getting rather popular tonight, Councillor Donald. Can I now ask the officers to comment on the validation of Councillor Jenkins' proposal?
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the settlement hierarchy, clearly the purpose of that is to seek to identify those villages which have got the most facilities and services such that they can cater for a level of development appropriate to those facilities and services. And in terms of Brailsford, it is undeniable that along with Doveridge and Holland Ward, it is a settlement which in sustainability terms is very much at the higher level of sustainability, albeit clearly less than the main market towns and Darley-Dale, hence the reason why there is significant development pressures in and around Brailsford. In regard to the actual exclusion of the site previously, clearly we were in a context of not having to require or provide anything like the level of housing growth which we are now looking to provide, and we were in the position of being able to exclude certain sites because we felt that we were able to accommodate our housing need in the way in which we chose to do so in response to public concerns. We're no longer in that situation. Clearly, we still have a shortfall. There are sites which have come forward. We have assessed them in terms of whether they are available, deliverable and viable, and the fact is that they are. And whilst Brailsford does see a similar level of development to Doveridge, in sustainability terms, it is on par with that particular settlement, such that we don't feel that the tipping point in terms of the village has been exceeded, hence the reason why the allocation has been proposed.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I've got a mind to support Councillor Jenkins. Not only that I'm being consistent tonight in voting for these extractions and we're going to lose so many houses, that's not the point. The point to me is that I've argued the case for Tansley, and I take the fact that Brailsford is in the same position, and over the years it had suffered so many developments. We're now encroaching on overdevelopment for a small community and what that community has to offer. And I also think that we could have spread the burden a lot better over Derbyshire Dales. And it would be hypocritical of me tonight to look at my own ward and support that, but not support somewhere else in the Derbyshire Dales that is very, very similar. So I shall be minded to support the retraction.
Councillor Rose.
Well, Chairman, I'm not going to make myself particularly popular, but I would like to say first that I think the way that Brailsford have approached this, and it's true of other places, has been very constructive and very consistent. And so we congratulate you on the fact Mike Hayes and I did have a meeting with them, and they made it clear they would accept some new houses, and I can see that they feel that we sort of taken them far too literally at their word and gone far beyond the point which might have been reasonable, but they are at least to be congratulated on being one of the few places, and I have to say one of the few places that actually put their hands up and said, you know, we do accept that there must be more development. And I think this whole argument about tipping points is a difficult one, because I think what applies to Brailsford certainly applies to Durbridge, without any doubt. Helen Ward is probably slightly behind in the numbers game, but Durbridge and Brailsford are about the same. And many members have spoken, and we've all spoken. I suppose I'm fortunate to represent a ward where there is no development proposal, but we would dearly love to see some. Yeah. I don't think it's very funny, because I think most of the villages in my area do need some new housing for sustainability purposes, for maintaining attendance at the schools. We have no shops, we have no post office and precious few pubs, so you can see what happens when you don't get sustainability. So, you know, I'm favour of it. I'm perhaps slightly jealous, and in the sense that, you know, 10, 20 houses in some of the villages I represent would not go amiss in the right places. But it's not as easy as that. But it is a point, and I think it's one we bear in mind, and I'm sure the Peak Park takes this to heart. This whole business of sustainability of villages is a very serious matter for those that aren't in the Brailsfords or Helen Wards or Durbridges, you know, where they think they're getting too much. There are other places where, perversely, we're not getting enough, and, you know, there's a risk involved in that, and there seems to be a bit of an imbalance there, which we can't just address through this process. But I would urge them to carry on the fight. I know the characters involved will, without doubt, fight this at the public consultation and later and in front of the inspector. But I'm sorry I can't support them on this occasion. They made some very valid points, but at this moment of time, I'm afraid I must stick with the plan.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I unfortunately can't support Councillor Jenkins either. But what he does make is a very valid point. We need to look much more constructively at all the villages in the area and see what they can take. It's too easy to say a village is too precious, they can't take any development. That puts enormous pressure on other villages. And I think that's probably something we need to take into the consultation and needs to be dealt with as part of the process. I was quite surprised at how few landowners put sites forward in the rural area, but I think that was because they were suspecting that it would be turned down on non-sustainability issues, and that's where it stalled. But I think we need to take a new approach throughout the consultation process.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, picking up on Councillor Flitter's point about the process, he knows as well as everyone of us that it's land availability. And I think Mr Wilson ought to comment on that for the benefit of the public, that unless the land comes forward, we've got no choice in this matter. Tipping point, very, very interesting point, because where do you stop? Do you draw a line in the Middle Ages? Do you draw a line in the building programme after the Second World War? We're stuck with the fact that every party that would be in government has stated this need for housing. And that's the problem we have. There is a great need, and the great problem is where we put them.
Thank you, Councillor Morley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I have some sympathy, and I am lucky enough to represent one of those rural wards in the south of the district. And Mr Wilson will remember that I was lobbying him could we have something in the plan that encouraged development in those villages. And I've been working very closely with the parish councils, and they're very, very sympathetic, and I'm pleased to say that, for instance, today in Marston Montgomery there's an application for 9 houses, and there will be more going on, and the parish council will support them. Unfortunately, it's going to take time.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've been so impressed by the representations from the residents of Brailsford tonight and from the ward member and others that I'm going to support the exclusion of this particular site. I think the tipping point has been achieved. It's heavy hearted to do so, and
Okay, thank you.
Plan Advisory Committee. I did support it at the site visits, and of course, what you see then are the assessments carried out by the officers. And I've said earlier, some of these assessments are fairly inconsistent, to be honest, and other members have pointed that out, Councillor Swiddle and others, on previous sites. So then you hear such strong views and opinions from local residents and people who are giving evidence from their villages, and you have to be swayed by that to some extent. It's a pity some of the members here tonight from the Peak Park villages aren't jumping up and saying, yes, we'll urge some development in the Peak Park, we'll get our parish councils to get in touch with the National Park Authority and say, we'll have some more houses in our villages, but they're very quiet, aren't they? Very silent, the silent minority or majority perhaps on this council. But it's unfortunate that we have to be in this position. I think there are other sites that have been overlooked and eliminated at local plan advisory that could be brought forward and proposed for development. There are some as I've suggested, and if I went through the whole of the trolled the whole of the list of rejected sites, I'd find plenty of sites, I think, on derelict land and adjacent to other developments which would be more suitable than some of these put forward tonight.
Just to answer your national park issue, I don't want to bore members or members of the public with some of my personal discussions with the park. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to rise to that one, I'm afraid. Being a member representative on the Peak District National Park. Yeah, I'm an exception, I think you. But I just have to say, you know, that there are ways of getting houses in the Peak District National Park, and it needs to be more explored. I mean, for example, in my village in Bradwell, we've recently done a neighbourhood plan, and all the houses, people were surveyed, and they agreed generally that 50 houses, new houses, would be appropriate. And we've got a developer now who's come forward with plans, who I'll be seeing next week, and no doubt that'll be coming before the Peak Park Board shortly. But 50 houses in a village the size of Bradwell is as significant as any of these proposals.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, sir, your chance was to make a submission 24 hours before the thing. I beg your pardon, but you weren't on the list, and I'm terribly sorry. It's a procedural thing, I'm afraid. Right. No. I'm sorry, that's not relevant tonight. Are there any other members who wish to speak before I ask Councillor Jenkins to sum up? Councillor Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I'll just say to councillors that I wonder, this is an effective doubling of the village, and I wonder how, for example, people in Ashbourne would feel if Ashbourne had enough houses for a further 8,300 people to bring it up to 16,500, because this is about proportionality. Thank you, Chair.
Just for consistency, could I propose that we go to a recorded vote?
Fine, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Runner. We're going to go for recorded vote again. I think we're all familiar with the procedure. Now, for vote is agreeing with Councillor Jenkins for exclusion of this site of Brailsford out of the draft local plan. Jackie.
Councillor Atkin.
Against.
Councillor Botham.
Against.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Catt.
Against.
Councillor Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Donnelly.
Against.
Councillor Anne Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Graham Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Against.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Furness.
For.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Councillor Millwood.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Pawley.
Against.
Councillor Purdy.
Against.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Salt.
Against.
Councillor Shirley.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Swindle.
For.
Councillor Tivenham.
Against.
Councillor Tilbrook. Councillor Wilde.
Against.
Start with the numbers, please.
6 votes in favour with 22 against. The motion is defeated.
Councillor Rose.
I'll move it to re-include itself.
Okay, that's seconded. So the proposal now is from Councillor Rose, that's been seconded to include the Brailsford site. Show of hands, please, in favour. Okay, and then those against.
Same again, Chair, with 22 votes in favour with 6 against.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much the residents of Brailsford for their participation. I'm sorry you were last on the agenda. Moving on now, that concludes our item 4. We have item 5 for inclusion tonight, please, members. The Derbyshire Dale Statement of Community Involvement. I'd just like to pass on to Mike Hayes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very briefly, we have a statutory duty to prepare a statement of community involvement, which basically sets out to local communities and stakeholders how they will be engaged in the preparation, alteration, review of local plans, and also in the determination of planning applications. Council considered a draft statement of community involvement in October last year. That consultation period ran through from the 5th of November to the 17th of December, and we received no representations as a consequence of that consultation. We are therefore recommending it to you for approval as is, and as is set out in Appendix 1 to the report.
Councillor Rose.
I hope we don't need a long debate on this, because I think this is, if you like, a positive step and a positive report, and it's consistent with what we've been saying in the earlier part of this meeting, and the officers are to be congratulated and bringing forward a report of this nature, and there's a lot to be done, and I'm sure the council will take it very seriously as before. I'd like to move the recommendation.
And a seconder, Councillor Swindle. Anyone else like to speak on this? It's been proposed and seconded. Can I put it to the vote, please? Hands up, members. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you all for your forbearance. It's been a very tricky meeting. Have a safe trip home, everyone. Thank you.